tastes exactly like Cinnabon. That was a quote from Daddy's Home.
Oh my gosh.
Daddy's Home, guys. Look, guess what? It's Father's Day as we're recording, which makes it even funnier that I recommended this totally by accident, by coincidence.
That is such a crazy coincidence, honestly. Welcome back, everyone. We are here on the Awful Takes podcast. It is episode 40?
39.
39.
Almost.
We're almost to 40.
Yeah, you'll get the 40th one. Sorry,
no, you're good. I always forget. Just because we've been on and off here, it's a little hard for me when it comes to summer, guys. My life just gets so busy throughout the week and everything, and then the weekends I'm just doing a lot of catch up. Yeah,
like, for sure.
Oh, what am I missing? Like I had to go do this, and
life gets in the way.
Yeah. But we're going to be coming out with more reviews. We got a lot of movies that are coming out that we want to talk about. So definitely write us down for 28 years later.
Very excited for that one.
Superman, maybe Fantastic Four. I still want to see Bring Her Back. So hopefully we'll have a few more movies kind of coming out here in a bit. We have a very interesting movie to talk about today. Very interesting recommendation. But before we get to that, how we kind of structure our shows, we talk about, movie news that we find interesting, right, going on in, today's day and age. And we'll just mention our thoughts on it before we get into the review. So if you're here for the actual review, feel free to skip ahead. We have the time descriptions ready to go. My name is Nabahi.
Hello, I'm Wallied from Sir Gator Productions.
And a bit of news that kind of caught our attention, at least I know for Wallied and me in general. We had mentioned before, I think it was D23 when it came out, that they were doing Incredibles 3.
Right,
and I swear when they announced it that Brad Bird was writing and directing it. However, it recently came out that he's only going to be writing it, and that for directing, they got a new director. The guy who made Elemental,
and The Good Dinosaur.
Oh, he did. Okay. Yeah. And what was his name again?
Peter Sohn.
Peter Sohn. Yeah. It will be directing Incredibles 3, still written by Brad Bird, but not directed by him.
Okay.
I guess I'll say for my thoughts, it's not that I don't mind it, but for me, what kind of happens is when we're kind of 2/3 into a trilogy and you've had one guy kind of doing it the whole time, I feel like you kind of run into the risk of the third almost being like the odd stepchild. It's
happened many times. Yeah. Like I can't tell you how many trilogies that's happened with.
Yeah. So it's not that I'm worried, but I really wish they just would have kind of just kept him on. I personally, I don't know what it is. Maybe he didn't want to do it. Maybe he had scheduling conflicts with another movie. I don't know. But I think, honestly, I don't think Brad Bird has made a movie since
Incredibles 2.
Oh, Incredibles 2.
Yeah, since Incredibles 2. So it's been quite a while. So, and that's kind of what I made the assumption that was the next project he was working on.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, I'm kind of at a loss for this. I don't mind The Good Dinosaur. It just felt maybe too by the numbers for me to really like love it that much. Okay. It just felt like, again, the same boy and his dog thing that we've seen. And I felt like with the whole concept of humans and dinosaurs existing at the same time.
That's a really awesome concept.
They just kind of barely,
they don't do anything with
tapped on it,
Yeah, for me personally, I wasn't a big fan of it. I think it's Pixar's worst film in my opinion. And I'm not blaming him, obviously. I know there was a lot of like production issues and different directors and everything. So I know he probably had like a big task ahead of him, and he did try his best, but unfortunately I just wasn't a big fan of the film, and I found a lot of it to be just really boring and forgettable, unfortunately, which is not something I usually say about a lot of Pixar movies. Like even their worst ones, like Cars 2, like are still entertaining in like a bad way, Yeah. But it does have me kind of interested though, because Brad Bird is writing it. I think it could be kind of interesting to see what Peter Sohn's directing style could be like for The Incredibles. I don't know how much it'll pan out, but I think it could be kind of interesting to see what his interpretation of the script and everything like that will be when this does come out and when we get more trailers and more footage and like him talking about the film. I think that could be very interesting because I don't think Pixar's really done that all that much. So
there are those rare instances in movies where the writing is very strong and almost just kind of carries it. And I feel like at that point you could kind of have any director kind of come in and really just go with it, you know? One of the instances, I guess, kind of with Disney for me that really worked was Ant-Man. I felt like the writing was so strong in it, you know, Edgar Wright's original script and everything, that when they got Peyton Reed, I was just kind of like, okay, like, you know, we'll see how it goes. I ended up really liking that movie. And I think a lot of the stuff I really enjoyed was just, you know, from the concept level in general.
You could kind of tell with the other Ant-Mans, they're not as good because Edgar Wright didn't write them.
Exactly. So, and I think we might have hopefully a similar situation where, I'll watch it and I'll enjoy it. And, you know, but I might just kind of walk away being like, they could have gotten any director really. I feel like.
For sure.
I think maybe what it is just more of like a situation where they're just getting this person to kind of meet a deadline. That's kind of what it kind of goes across in my head. That maybe,
for sure.
But then also one thing I want to take into account is Brad Bird has not been directing to my knowledge in a while. So I'm kind of at a point where I'm just like, what's going on with him? You know, he's such a good director. He's made some of the best movies.
Yeah, some of the best, like Ghost Protocol, Credibles.
One of the best animated movies of all time, The Iron Giant. And I'm just like, come on, like what's going on? Like, I want to see more movies from him. I don't know what kind of happened.
I wonder if it's maybe like he's just hasn't really found the passion and energy to direct. I wonder if maybe that's the case, especially after Incredibles 2. But I don't really know. It's kind of strange.
I know he was all in on Tomorrowland, and when that didn't really pan out in the way we all wanted it to. The
one miss in his catalog for sure.
I don't know if that had an effect on him.
I think it did.
So granted, whatever it is, I hope he finds that next project, and I hope he really just kind of jumps into it, you know?
Yeah, for sure. I still need to see Elemental from Peter Sohn also. I've heard that's a lot more of like his passion project and everything like that. And I've heard it's kind of like their take on like a rom-com. So I think it could be, so once I kind of see Elemental, I think I'll have maybe more of an idea and opinion on Peter Sohn and his filmmaking.
Yeah. We'll have to wait and see. But yeah, I was not expecting that news.
Yeah, that is very surprising to hear.
Very surprising. All right. The next bit of news, something that caught our interest, well, at least I know mine. They did the trailer for Wicked, the follow-up.
For Good.
Wicked for Good.
I'm surprised it's not part 2.
I'm surprised too. Yeah. Very surprised. I know when the first one came out, it kind of drops the whole part 1.
Yeah, I wasn't aware of that when I saw it. And I think that was also like a bit of a turnoff for me when I saw the film. I was like, oh, wait, part 1 of a movie? What? Yeah. What is this? But I actually rewatched part 1 a couple of months ago, and I actually really connected with me a lot more. I think it helped me to get a better idea of like the story and things like they were setting up. I really loved the musical numbers and everything. And it surprisingly kind of goes by a lot quicker, I think, on a second watch, because I think now that I know like everything that happens, I think it definitely helped with like the pacing. And so seeing this trailer does have me really excited. I have no idea if there's going to be more musical numbers or anything like that, but honestly, some of the ones they teased in the trailer, I like really, really loved a lot. And I hope one thing that they can expand on a little bit more that I think the first film does pretty solidly well is the relationship between Elphaba and Glinda.
I think for me last year, it was definitely one of the bigger surprises. I wasn't really expecting much from it. And when I went to go see it, I was awakened to this whole thing, you know. obviously the fans of, you know, the stage play and everything,
right? Yeah,
have been praising this thing to no end, and I just wasn't aware of it. So I guess now it's kind of like I'm playing catch up, you know. But I really like it when adaptations service, you know, the source material in a good way. And I haven't heard much complaints with the direction and everything for the people who love the stage play. I feel like they generally really like this adaptation.
Yeah. Seems to have like a pretty great response.
Yeah.
And for somebody who's watching this for the first time, I like loved it a lot more the second time. And I think it also helps for me because it's like, it's obviously like a totally different interpretation of like the Wizard of Oz story that like we all know about and everything. And it's also just really fascinating to kind of see like a different side of like the story we kind of know and like see like the Wicked Witch and like her relationship with like the other witch from the Wizard of Oz films, you know?
Yeah. I'm excited. I mean, it's for me, it's great that it's only going to be like a year in between.
I know
the two.
that was really nice, especially with how, honestly though, I mean, the way part one kind of ends and everything with that Defying Gravity song, like honestly, that if you told me that was the ending, I would be like, that's cool. And I think it'll be very interesting to see how they follow up this like new one and everything.
No, really though. Hopefully they can, you know, find that same
energy
rhythm and energy that first one had, and maybe just make it like a little more condensed. You know, I will say that was my one issue with the first one was it did go on for a while. So hopefully this one really is just like a nice companion piece and just like, nope, we're picking right up where we left you and this is it, you know?
Yeah. I love the costumes in that trailer.
Yeah,
like they look fantastic. And I love, this was one of the only few complaints I had was like some of the colors feeling a little like kind of grayed out at some points. But just seeing this trailer, like I love how much the colors just pop out in this like new trailer. So yeah, very excited for it. Big grower on me for sure. I think this will definitely, when I see part two, it'll definitely be interesting to see how much part one will be, you know, now knowing the full kind of like story and everything like that.
Let's see where we go, honestly. But yeah, color me excited because that was a good trailer.
Yeah, awesome song, by the way. When I hear that in the movie, I'm going to be defying gravity. God.
All right. What are we talking about?
All right. Oh, my God. Yep. Happy Father's Day, everybody. I recommended Daddy's Home from 2015. Oh, my Jesus.
Crazy.
Directed by Sean Anders. Oh, God. Has Will Ferrell, Mark Wahlberg in it. Pretty simple setup. It's essentially about Brad Whitaker, Will Ferrell. He's a stepdad, you know, loves his kids very much. And one day, Daddy Marky Mark comes in and he's like, nope, I'm going to take over my kids and I'm going to make sure they have all the love that they need. And so essentially it becomes a dad versus stepdad rivalry.
That's a good concept.
And I actually do really like this concept. I think it's a perfect setup for a comedy film.
Yeah.
I'll get into why it works for like half of it because the film has almost no interest in it because it decides to go on a stupid detour. I'll get into it in a second. But this was a film, I remember my introduction to it was my dad and I, we really loved watching trailers together, or at least when I was a kid. We would always watch like trailers to what was coming soon and everything like that. And I remember my dad and I being very excited for Daddy's Home. Well, I saw, you know, for me, I'd always really liked Will Ferrell as a kid, like films like Talladega Nights, Megamind, which I think is a really great film.
Yeah.
And so I've always really liked Will Ferrell a lot. I've always loved his style of over the top comedy where he's just super in your face, kind of loud. So yeah, we got excited to watch it. We eventually saw it. My dad rented it from a Redbox in 2016. Jesus. Nice. Yeah. Remember those guys? And I remember really loving it a lot. I don't know what it was. I think I just found like the concept of like, you know, like a dad really trying to impress his kids to just be like a really funny concept and everything like that. And I really liked that a lot, you know, and I remember being so obsessed with it. And I remember loving the chemistry between Mark Wahlberg and Will Ferrell. I'm usually not big into Mark Wahlberg. I find him to be kind of a okay actor for the most part, but for some reason I just thought he was so funny in this film when I was a kid. And so I asked my mom if I could get it on a Blu-ray, and so I got it on like the Blu-ray DVD digital copy thing that they used to sell at the stores.
Nice.
And I just remember watching it like all through middle school. And then, you know, obviously I was excited when they announced Daddy's Home 2. I'll get into that near the end because I don't really like that one at all. And so, yeah, I actually revisited this film during COVID because I was trying to look for more things to like kind of like get me through the pandemic and everything. And so I remember kind of enjoying it a bit. It was obviously not as good as I had remembered, but I still enjoyed my time with it. And I was also around the time I had saw Step Brothers for the first time. So I was getting back into like Will Ferrell and his like whole comedy and everything. Yeah. And so, yeah, rewatching it for this episode, it's just quite an experience. It's obviously not as good as I remember it being. There's definitely a lot that I really like that we can get into, but there's also a lot about it that just does not work for me, unfortunately, which does make me kind of sad. So, Nabahi, I know you are a bit into Will Ferrell, and I know you hadn't seen this film. So can you talk to me a little bit like about your experience with Will Ferrell and kind of like how you feel a lot about like his comedies and everything?
I like his comedy. I think for me with him is he to me he's can go really far with how you know intense his comedy is, you know, which I think is a very hard thing to do. You know, out of nowhere he can have a totally different voice or go super crazy, you know, but then his kind of deadpan comedy works really well too, you know?
Yeah.
And I think that's why I enjoy him so much is he's not afraid to do both. Sometimes you see comedic actors and comedians, you know, just kind of stick to their wheelhouse, you know?
Yeah.
I feel like Will Ferrell has his own unique sense of what he thinks is funny. Like sometimes he'll be a guest on a show and he's just super out there, just crazy, acting like a clown. And then the next time he comes on, he just is like...
He's playing it straight in the funniest way.
Yeah, and that's a hard thing to do. Now with his movies, sometimes it really works, sometimes they don't. You know, like obviously Talladega Nights is, for me, a really funny movie. I love him in there.
Yeah, definitely.
But then you get some of the other stuff.
Holmes and Watson.
Oh my God. You get stuff like that. Or, you know, what it was, he did a couple of recent movies too that I just wasn't a fan of.
Oh, I know he did one during COVID called Eurovision that I really did not like, unfortunately. That one was a little too obnoxious for my taste.
I don't want to outright dismiss him now in today's day and age, but I will say I'm kind of waiting for his kind of new renaissance. You know, I feel like sometimes comedians have those where they just kind of come out of nowhere and they're put back into the mainstream again. I feel like he's kind of been out of it for a little bit.
He has been for sure, you know, and I don't really know, honestly. I think with SNL too and that kind of style, that's kind of been like a kind of on and off thing with a lot of audiences and everything like that. So I don't really know if that maybe kind of plays a part into that.
Yeah. But I will say the kind of duo that him and Mark Wahlberg have can really work.
Yeah, it's surprising.
Obviously, the one before this, the other guys, they tapped on something that really, really was funny. You know?
Cool.
Finding those kind of buddy comedy pairings is hard.
It is. And for it to work as well as it can is like such a great feat in of itself, you know.
And then when they kind of follow it up and try it again, either you succeed and elevate it or you just kind of leave it. Like like obviously one of the big ones, Shaun of the Dead, you know,
Simon Pegg, Nick Frost.
They were able
fantastic.
to kind of continue it each time. And then really, I feel like in this case with Will Ferrell and Mark Wahlberg, this one didn't work for me in the sense that the other guys did, but I still really liked the premise and everything. I just felt like maybe they could have done maybe just a little more with it, you know?
I think that's really like my biggest issue with this is like, I really feel like you can take the rivalry farther, you know, and it sucks because you only get it through like a montage or you get like sprinkles of it. Like with the scene where they go to like the basketball game, like that's a really funny scene. Like he spends $18,000 on those seats, you know, all just to literally just impress his kids, you know, like that's commitment right there. And that's something I wish this film did more of. Is committing to the whole bit and everything, you know, like show, like, I don't know, like show him doing dad stuff. Like I try to think of like premises like that, where like you can show that rivalry, you know, and sure, it maybe would be predictable, but it would make for really funny tension and chemistry and rivalry of them trying to like show off to their kids of like how to like fix a car or how to fix like a tire or how to like grill burgers or like
there's a certain absurdity that can come out of dads when their kids are around, you know? And it's funny to see. And when you see it, it's just like, that's a dad, you know? And I wish this movie had more of that, or maybe just the different aspects of kind of like the competitive side of being a dad. You know, you think your kid's the best. You think your kid's number one, and you know, you have a totally different way of being a dad than someone else does. You know? Show those kind of different angles. Show, you know, maybe a whole group of dads. You know, things like that. I guess that was one of the more funny things for me was like having the different characters in it, like Bill Burr, you know, something.
That was
like,
shock. That was a big jump scare. Like seeing him with hair, I was like, whoa, what the?
I guess it made it funnier now,
for sure.
But then it would have been. But you know, just showing that like kind of competitive side. I really wish this was kind of like a situation with Jingle All the Way, where they just fully went for it,
like fully commit to it, have it be like a straight up comedy. And, you know, it's funny, you mentioned the competitive side, like they kind of show a little bit of like the basketball thing in the montage, but it's through a montage. Like, why would you show it through a montage? You know, show like maybe Mark Wahlberg's like really great at basketball or something like that. That would be so much funnier, you know? He's like dunking on the kids or something like that. That could be really funny. So it's unfortunate they don't really show that side either. And for some reason, the film decides to take a detour into this whole thing about like the mom wanting like another baby, basically. And oh my God. And they have this whole sequence of where they go to like the fertility clinic. And it is like so uncomfortable. And it's so funny because I remember my dad telling me, he's like, "Don't look, son." And and I didn't know why he told me not to look. But now that I'm like older, I'm watching it now for this episode. I'm like, oh yeah, I could see why he told me not to like look. And it's really bad. And the jokes are so immature and terrible. They're doing this whole like dick measuring contest thing.
God.
And it's funny because it reminded me a little bit of, I don't know if you've seen it, Boogie Nights with Mark Wahlberg, where, you know, the whole movie, he's like showing off his dick. I don't know why I thought of that. I don't know if it was like in reference to that, but it was really awful. And then it's just like, it takes up so much of the movie. And I'm like, this is like so uninteresting to me. It is so boring. And then it just feels like that's all like the mother does is she's just there to be the pregnant lady, you know, oh, she just wants a kid, you know? And I think it's just such a missed opportunity because I think it could have showed like the mom maybe being like the stray character in this whole absurd rivalry basically. And you can show it of like, she's actually the one kind of like taking care of the kids. She's kind of the one like grounding everything that's happening, you know? That could have been such an interesting like thing to do. And it's unfortunate too, because she's actually a really great actress. For those of you guys who've seen Gravity Falls, she voices Wendy. She's really funny in that show. And she's actually a really great actress, like outside of this movie, but you wouldn't be able to tell watching it, watching this film. But
I think they could have tapped onto those different points of view that we all have of fathers, dads, you know, like how many times do you see a mom watching their husband and they're like, I can't even explain what he's doing. Like
exactly. Yeah.
Or kids, like the kids' point of view with their dad, you know, they think they're the best and everything. You know, I feel like they could have, this movie seeded all of those moments, and then you're just kind of waiting for them to kind of pop up, and
they don't
ever do it. And I'm just like,
and you maybe get like one scene of it where they like have like the talk with like the son, and they're doing like the fight thing. I thought that was a really great scene, you know? And I thought it was kind of funny how they like kind of subvert it, where like Will Ferrell's like, no, actually I was a total wimp and everything, you know? Cause it's funny to hear that perspective from the dads, you know, because they come from such different backgrounds, and they have such a different way of viewing things. And I think that scene perfectly encapsulates it well. And I just wish the film would show that more in the scene, you know, cause I thought that was a really great scene. And then the scene that subverts it also, like when they go to the daddy-daughter dance, like was so funny, where they're like, it's like you find out it's like a girl and everything, and it makes it more messed up. It's a great like kind of little subversion thing. And that really caught me off guard watching it when I saw it for the first time. But I just wish the scene kind of had more heartfelt scenes like that, you know, where they actually like talking to the kids, you know, like they can hear like what the kids actually think.
Yeah. I think overall they had chemistry, obviously, in the other guys and everything. And I think they were trying to
kind of like recapture that same energy.
And maybe, I don't know, maybe it's just the director didn't know how to go about it, or maybe the writing honestly just kind of let things down. But I feel like they weren't able to do it, because I was like, in that other movie, I really enjoyed their back and forth. I enjoyed, like,
I still need to see that one for sure.
It's enjoyable, definitely. I feel like they had more scenes where they complemented each other's comedy really well. I feel like in this, I was just kind of waiting for it, and I was just hoping it was going to come back, and it does in some moments. Sometimes, you know, there are funny scenes, but most of the time I was just kind of like, you know,
they just kind of fall flat a lot of the time. And I think it's funny you mentioned the writing, because I feel like so much of it feels improvised a lot of the time. Like there's a scene that I thought was kind of funny, but it goes on for way too long. The scene where it's where Griff is like convincing Brad to like go to the daddy-daughter dance, basically. I thought that was a pretty funny when he's all, Griff, wait, you know, but then they just keep playing it on, and they keep stretching out the scene to the point where it's like the joke is just dead, and they keep beating it to death. And I'm just like, okay, hurry it up already. Like, what are we doing? It feels like a deleted scene that wasn't supposed to be there. That's how some of these kind of scenes feel, like the whole thing with his boss and him telling him about like, granted, I like Thomas Hayden Church. I think he's a pretty solid actor, but I thought it was maybe funny the first time they do it, but it is such a terrible running gag that I'm just like, okay, please stop. Like, it's not funny at all. And it doesn't have any purpose to the story, which I guess you could argue is like the point of it, but it just doesn't work. And I think what could have been a lot better was maybe just him giving Brad really terrible advice and him just going along with it and actually trying it out in the next scene. It could have been predictable, sure, but it would have been a really funny payoff.
There are those moments in comedy and comedy movies where they have those running gags, they have those reoccurring jokes, and I'm just like, in the writer's room, did you guys think you were tapping onto like gold or something? Like, why do you like, I just don't get it. Like, sometimes I'm just like, how do you drag this out this long?
It's
like at some point, someone has to realize, okay, maybe this isn't as funny as we thought. You know?
Yeah. It just feels like a bunch of 13-year-olds wrote it at times. And maybe that's why 12-year-old me liked it, maybe. But even then,
I think that's an interesting kind of commentary, I guess, with comedy movies in general, is I feel like they're not being made as much anymore, like mainstream comedy movies.
Right, yeah.
And I'm really curious if movies like this are to almost kind of to blame for that, you know, maybe something, getting all these high paid actors to come and do this thing. Maybe it's just not feasible anymore. Maybe it might as well just dump it on streaming and put, you know,
I feel like if this would have came out today, it definitely would have been like dumped to like Hulu or Netflix or something like that.
Yeah.
And it's so funny because like watching this, it feels so dated, and it's from 2015. I feel like this is one of those movies that could have came out in like the late 2000s, like early 2010s. It just has that like look to it. Watching it, like just it feels so flat and kind of like lifeless at times. Like even with like the CG motorcycle. Yeah, I mean we were talking about motorcycles in the last episode. Man, Mad Max wishes it could have motorcycles like this.
Exactly.
But it just feels so dated watching it. It feels like something I would have found at like the library in like 2006 or something, you know? That's how I feel watching this.
This is very much those movies. I don't think they have them anymore, but Walmart used to have these bargain bins.
Oh, the $5 DVD bins. It feels like that.
Me and my girlfriend used to go up to it and just reach down and then just pull out a movie. No matter what it was, we bought it and watched it.
Nice.
That's how I saw the original Super Mario Bros. Movie.
Oh, really?
Yeah. But this movie feels a lot like it would be in that bin, you know?
I wouldn't be surprised if it was in that bin at some point. And I guess I wanted to touch on something too. A lot of the music choices in this are pretty awful. The only one I thought was okay was like the Jay-Z one where he's like going through like he's all walking like he's owning the place. I thought that was kind of funny, but oh my God, that god awful. If you want the love, the band, come and get it.
Crazy.
And they play it twice in the film, and holy cow, it is one of the most egregious, terrible like songs I've ever heard. It sounds like I'm listening to a commercial in the middle of a movie. And there are just so many awful choices of music in here. I thought Thunderstruck was kind of an okay one. I'm like, yeah, I could kind of imagine this is like what Dusty probably listens to on his free time. I think those were maybe the only two choices that were okay. But yeah, either just the generic score that they play, comedic, quirky music is so terrible in this. And then you just have some other music choices. Like they play like a G6.
Oh my God.
In the dance battle sequence. And that's what I say. Like this real feels like it came out in like the late 2000s because I'm like, when was the last time you've heard that song?
That song is so dated.
Like it is the most generic 2000s electro pop song I've ever heard in my life. And granted, I think the dance battle sequence is kind of funny. But it's just why that song, I don't know why. There's so many others. Like sure, even if you could pick like the most dance song known to man, it still would have been better than like a G6.
No, I agree.
So yeah, I'll talk about some positives and then we can, I know there's a few. There are a few funny moments I liked. Like I liked in the beginning where it's like you're seeing like the stepdad's perspective of like him being with his kids. I do think that's like a pretty funny setup. I like the whole bit where he goes to the dentist and like, it's like screened on like his blue pants and he's all, bro, you got a weird tongue. I love, and so seeing as we mentioned the running gags, I think the only running gag I really loved was Griff. I thought he was just really funny throughout, and it's so random, but it's just funny that he just keeps popping up and he eventually just like becomes like a part of the family and they name the kid after him. I don't know why. It's just so absurd and so goofy. And I just kind of wish the film leaned, again, like I wish it leaned more into that because it's so funny. Again, the Bill Burr jump scare, was not expecting that. It's so weird to see him in like a movie like this. It is so funny. And then, dance sequence again, it's okay. But again, just god awful music choice. I just don't know why you would look, I'm a massive fan of dance music. So I could probably give you like 20 other songs that would be better than this one. I mean, heck, like One More Time by Daft Punk would be a better song than like a G6. And then, I don't know, for me, I kind of found it hilarious, like the John Cena cameo at the end of like, funny. I'm like, that's kind of funny. And it would have been funnier if the second film actually did anything with it.
Oh, okay.
But they don't do anything with it. I'll get into it in a second. And then I will say the one funny line that I really caught me off guard was I named, because they get this like tumor dog. They don't do anything with it, obviously, but they get this dog named Tumor, and he's all, I named him Tumor because of how much he grows on you. And I don't know why. That's just such a funny line.
That is pretty funny.
It's so predictable, but it's so funny. But yeah,
I'd say for me, positives, again, just premise. Premise is where a lot of the intrigue comes from, you know?
Yeah.
And I feel like if you have a really good premise, there are just those ideas that just come to mind, and you're just like, oh man, that would be funny. Oh, this would be great, you know? And sometimes the premise just kind of falls flat, you know?
Which is so surprising, because I'm like, this is such a simple setup to like
so many jokes.
Ruin. Like, it's impossible to ruin a setup like this, but my God, do they manage to ruin it, unfortunately.
I think a benefit of this movie might have had is just, you know, test it out with audiences, see what they respond to, because you know you're coming off the success of the other guys and everything, and you're trying to make that chemistry work in a different context now. Now it's not the same cop thing that we were used to. Now it is these dads. Maybe see if that works, you know, and if it doesn't, get two different actors, you know. Maybe that's what needed to happen. And just from a writing standpoint, I feel like they could have tapped into this idea just so much more than they did. You know, there are those funny moments, like Wallied mentioned, the dance battle, the intro and everything, but past that, it's just like, where did this kind of all fall apart?
Yeah.
You know?
And I think the problem is that whole like wanting a baby thing, you know, because it's trying to be like super raunchy and everything. And it's like, I wouldn't mind it if that was maybe what the movie was about. Like if it was maybe more like a Judd Apatow comedy, or maybe more like an R-rated comedy, I'd be maybe more forgiving to that. But it's the fact that it's like, it's a PG-13 comedy with Will Ferrell and Mark Wahlberg. And the whole setup is, you know, they're trying to like win over their kids, basically, you know, like that's perfect. You already have a great setup. You don't need to do anything else with it. But the film, for some reason, and I don't know if it's the filmmaker, I think he was just trying to blend comedy and drama. And I think maybe he wanted to show that more drama side, I guess.
Part of his demo reel. Just kidding.
You know, he has to show off the demo reel.
That is one thing too.
And I just don't know if that's what it was trying to go for, but obviously it falls flat on its face and it doesn't work. And none of the humor in that, like I mentioned, that whole fertility clinic is so terrible and so gross and just like creepy.
That's one thing
I don't like it at all.
Mention is I think raunchiness can feel very jarring if it's not done right. You know? It can just be like, at least for me personally, it just feel like Wally mentioned, just kind of gross. And it's just like, all right, it's one thing to have kind of an offhand joke like that, but then to just keep at it, and it's just like, all right,
and it doesn't work, and they're still beating it to death. And I just wonder if they maybe thought it was a lot funnier than it was. Honestly, but yeah, it's really bad, and it really just brings the film down like a lot, unfortunately. And I think that's why it just doesn't hold up as well as I thought I did, because it's just like it takes up like half of the movie.
Yeah. I guess in closing, I think this duo worked. Obviously, it worked in other movies and stuff. I think
John C. Reilly's a lot better than Mark Wahlberg.
I think Mark Wahlberg is kind of just one note, you know, and he does what he does and he does it well, but he's past that.
There's a ceiling.
Yeah,
there's a ceiling with him.
He has limitations. But who knows? I mean, honestly, I don't really see myself coming back to this movie other than kind of mentioning what's a premise that you really like that maybe doesn't deliver. You know, that's an interesting idea, especially in comedy. I guess that is one of the questions I'll ask following it up. But I guess score wise, honestly, I'd be probably like at a 3 or a 2. I just really don't see myself coming back to this. There were some scenes that were funny, but you know, if I wanted to watch those again, I could probably just go on YouTube and just watch 2 minutes or 3 minutes rather than the whole movie.
But yeah,
I mean, Will Ferrell, he he swings, I'll give him that. He at least tries every time. He goes for things that he thinks are funny and stuff. He's like trying. That.
I'll give him that.
I just feel like that whole 2010s kind of comedy is kind of the result of where we are now.
They wonder where the studio comedies all went.
Exactly.
So I'll mention this before closing thoughts. So they did make a sequel to this, and it's even worse than this one, actually. I didn't rewatch it for the episode, but I watched it when I was like 14, and it is so terrible. Like, it is basically this movie, but now it's like their dads. So it's like grandpa's hope, basically. And so they got Mel Gibson to be Mark Wahlberg's dad, and then they got John Lithgow to be like Will Ferrell's dad.
I think I remember seeing the trailers for this.
Yeah, it is really, really bad. None of the jokes land. It's literally just the worst rehashing of a first film I've ever seen. John Cena is barely in the movie. He's in it for like one scene, him and his stepdaughter or whatever, and that's it. That's all John Cena does. So that's also why this ending kind of pisses me off, because this is eventually, they didn't do anything with it, basically. And so, I don't recommend it. It's really bad. It's way worse than this film, but just kind of forgettable and boring, basically. Which is the worst thing for me, what a film could be. So, closing thoughts. It's disheartening to say, but it is obviously not as good as I remember it being. It is kind of aged a lot worse, unfortunately. A lot of jokes that don't land, unfortunately, but you have some cool setups. You have some cool jokes that I do kind of like and that I still will get a big chuckle at. Will Ferrell obviously kills it. Yeah, he's always great. And same with Hannibal Buress. It's nice to see him in like a movie where he kind of shines, aside from that godforsaken Tag movie that he was in. So terrible. I don't want to get into that one. But so I guess for me, this is definitely a case of like the childhood favorites that are not as good as I remember. And just a lot of jokes that don't land, a lot of wasted potential, unfortunately, especially with the wife. She's a really fantastic actress. Not much to work with, though. But again, the whole thing with the baby is just so terrible and just really makes the film even worse to rewatch, knowing that context and everything. I guess rating wise for me, I'd probably be at like, I guess a 2 out of 10. This was a massive disappointment to me. Again, I do really like Will Ferrell a lot. I do, I'll always watch whatever he's in, even if it's not that great, just because I always really like his style of humor and everything. But this was just such a massive letdown and just a lot of wasted potential, unfortunately. I'm thinking like a 2 out of 10. Honestly,
one of the things that comes to mind when watching this is nowadays, where are we with comedy movies? It really is just streaming now. I feel like
straight to streaming mostly.
Sometimes they do have kind of like, the art house kind of comedy stuff, just super small. But I feel like nowadays you don't really see like the studio made kind of not big budget, but modest budget comedy
mid-budget
movies. I feel like those came and went, and I feel like the audience for them is now just on streaming, and they put thought into it, but I just feel like it's not on that same level. Granted, maybe there might be some hidden gems out there of comedy movies on streaming that I don't know about, but I miss the movies, that other side of blockbuster movies where it was like a comedy that people all really liked, like a 21 Jump Street or, Super Bad or something,
or like a Grown Ups for me personally, like some of those Adam Sandler comedies.
There was those staples, that would come out every so often. And I feel like they're just non-existent. So I guess, what do you think it is? Is it just studio? Like, granted, maybe with this movie, maybe the budget was, more expensive than they thought. Like, these are some big names that are
Mark
in this
Wahlberg's,
movie.
Very expensive actor.
Yeah.
I guess for me, I guess what it is like, I think a lot of it just kind of was like, you know, they're kind of just doing the same jokes. A lot of it relied on like raunchiness a lot of the time. That's kind of something I noticed with a lot of studio comedies is they kind of just rely on a lot of just like the predictable kind of same old jokes. And I think that's something like audiences probably started noticing around like the late 2010s and everything, and kind of why they kind of stopped supporting them and everything like that, because they're just kind of like, it's kind of just the same formula and they're not really trying anything new or different. They're not really doing anything like super risky or anything crazy like that. I think that played like a very big part into why we don't really get a lot of studio comedies now. And I think also because like just again, a lot of I've noticed this a lot more, but I think like mid-budget films have kind of mostly died out for the most part. Like you get some every once in a while, but I feel like it's either like the extreme of like low budget shoestring budgets or like just high budget like $200 million films. And I think that also is plays a big part into maybe why there isn't a lot of comedies. Like I mentioned that tag movie, like that's a god awful comedy film about like literally people playing tag. And they're doing like a 30-year game of tag, which is an interesting concept. But of course, they don't do anything with it. And it just has the lame old sex jokes and lame old predictable jokes that you've seen dozens and dozens of times in film. So I think that plays a big part into why we don't really get a lot of studio comedies anymore. And I think the audiences kind of just grew tired of them.
One of the things I want to mention is I don't really, I've kind of grown out of taste with a lot of meta humor, meta, you know, knowledge in films and things now. I feel like that kind of gag and stuff really grew tired for me pretty fast.
Yeah, I know.
I kind of, the reason I bring it up is just, I know when we talked about Muppets, like there is a meta side to it. You know, we're making a sequel, definitely. Things like that. But I just feel like nowadays when I see comedies, and the few I've seen like on
Rick
streaming,
and Morty's a big one.
They just,
Deadpool and Wolverine, I think, was a really awful example of like meta humor not done well at all.
I feel like it's just now like for me bottom of the barrel kind of thinking, and I feel like that's nowadays what I see a lot when it comes to like humor and things like that. It's just like, oh, we're kind of being meta about it, you know? And
I think it's just such a lazy way of writing too, of like, oh, look, we're doing a fourth wall break. Look how bad the scene is, guys. Yeah. Look, it's so bad, right? Wink, wink.
And I feel like nowadays that's where I notice a lot of like humor, people always making jokes like that, you know, always thinking in that way. And not to say like it can't be done right, but I just feel like it is kind of played out for me. You know, I nowadays when I see meta things, I'm just like, all right, like that's cool. You know?
Yeah. I think something that I wish studio comedies would do more is do something like Jingle All the Way, is just really commit to the bits, you know, just have that be the driving force for a lot of the humor that you're watching. I think that's the problem with a lot of these comedies, with some of these studio comedies, is they commit to it for like half of it, and then they just decide to detour into other things because they think their audience is just going to get bored with it. Yeah. And I think that's the problem a lot of these films suffer, you know, is they don't want to just commit to the bit and see how far they can take it. Yeah. They want to add this drama side to it. They want to add this boring subplot that adds literally nothing to the movie, you know? And I think that's kind of why a lot of these films also died out too, is just because I think people started kind of also noticing that pattern, and I think people realize like it's not really as funny on like a rewatch, you know?
Yeah. Who knows? I mean, it's very interesting to talk about this movie and just kind of think like, oh, this is kind of gone now. You know?
It's such a fascinating time capsule for sure. You know, to think this was like 10 years ago is insane to me, you know, especially because so much has happened in like the last 10 years, you know, and everything. And I think with COVID and everything like that, and of course with streaming being as big as it is now, it's like, you know, granted, there's still a lot of great comedies out there, but most of the time it's usually not like a straight up comedy. It's usually just, it's comedy, but they're blending it with some other genre a lot of the time.
I really want to see a resurgence in comedy movies. I feel like that hands down has to be the most challenging type of
film to make.
That you're trying to make. It's just, humor is just so diverse, and it's so, by the person, that to dial in on something that has mass appeal is a challenge,
Right.
But I would love to see a resurgence in that. And I would just love to see us kind of step away from the meta-ness. Like not even in just comedies. I see meta-ness in everything now. It's just like the whole, we know what we're doing,
Look, guys, look how it's written.
Yeah.
Isn't that crazy?
I don't know. Like, that might be a different discussion for a different time. But I guess that was some of the interesting thoughts that kind of popped up.
Great question.
While watching these movies,
Yeah.
All right. Next recommendation.
All right. What do we got?
I figured we'd do more, at least for me. Kind of go back to the whole kind of guilty pleasure thing that I was doing with Mission Impossible 2.
The best one.
This one I've kind of mentioned offhandedly. It's not like I hate this movie or that I think it's terrible. I just think it kind of missed the mark in general. However, I have like a certain attachment to it because this was kind of my exposure to, franchises.
Okay.
Well, these two particular franchises in general. We're watching Alien versus Predator.
Oh my God.
I don't know. Like I have like a certain kind of love of this movie in a way. Like it's not good by any means. I don't think it's good.
It's not.
But again, like, I wasn't in the side of being anticipating this whole crossover. For me, this was the first time I had seen either one of these, so I was just kind of like, okay, I don't really know what I'm gonna see, and I kind of enjoyed it.
It's so funny. This was actually my introduction to Alien and Predator, believe it or not. Nice. So
same with me.
This will be kind of fun to revisit.
Yeah. And I think it's interesting now. Obviously, we're kind of in a little resurgence of both of these franchises in a way.
Yeah, with Romulus and
Prey, and now the new Predator movie Badlands coming out later on this year.
Okay.
It'd be kind of interesting to kind of discuss the weird kind of stepchild of the franchises, both of them in a way. And obviously this was early 2000s, so you kind of have that whole going over this whole thing.
What a crossover.
And also to kind of discuss versus movies in general, because they were a thing.
I have an opinion
point.
about those.
Yeah.
I'll get into that.
And I feel like it could be kind of interesting. Again, like,
cool.
I'm not going to defend this movie. I don't think it's a hidden gem by any means. I just have kind of an appreciation for it.
What are you talking about? It's the most hidden gem of all the Alien movies.
But I don't
Ridley
like
Scott wishes.
The thing, what makes it guilty pleasure is I don't like people knowing that I like this movie. I always kind of keep it to myself. Because the moment I say it, like Wallied's reaction is just like, really? But yeah, I figured we kind of go back and stick in that kind of same vein.
Yeah.
We all have them. We all have those movies when we were growing up that,
Yeah, it's all right. I made you sit through Daddy's Home, so it's okay.
But that'll be the next one.
Yeah, I haven't seen this one in a while. I saw it like 6 years ago, so this will be fun to revisit.
Definitely. But thank you guys for joining us. Look forward to more reviews and things coming out here pretty soon.
All right. Good day and good night, mates.
See you on the next one.
Happy Father's Day.
Father's Day.